was wall-to-wall international sports yesterday. You start out with Wimbledon. It's awesome when the British Open or Wimbledon, it's early in the morning and you're like, yeah. And then all of a sudden you start to plan your day. Next thing you know, you've got soccer in the afternoon with the Euros and then Summer League basketball. And then at night you had Copa. And I'm watching because I'm friends with Rob Stone. He's the host of Fox Sports. And so he's hosting this, and I keep waiting. Like I'm waiting to go, when are they going to go out to the event? And they kind of downplayed what was going on prior to the game, leading up to the game. And all of a sudden you realize that, you know, the Copa America final with Argentina and Colombia was a mess. And we wanted to talk to somebody who was there. Paul Tenorio, the senior writer for The Athletic, he was there and joins us from the Fort Lauderdale area. Paul, thanks for joining us. When did you realize something was wrong pregame?
Yeah, it was a little bit before 6 o'clock. We started to hear that there were issues with people that were jumping fences, trying to get into the games. And we saw a couple photos on the Getty wires, actually, of people being arrested. And so at that point, my colleagues, Felipe Cardenas, Jack Lang, and myself, we went down to the gates to see what was going on. And I got down there at about 6:05 or so. And right around when I got down there, they closed the gates. And at that point, you're kind of thinking, okay, they're going to try to get control of this situation. But very quickly, within a few minutes, I realized that the decision to close the gates was going to be one that made the situation worse, not better. And I didn't go back upstairs until, well after 8 p.m. And just spent the next 2 hours documenting everything that was going on around the gates and all of the madness and the issues that were playing out.
How close was this to a disaster last night?
Yeah, I think really close. There was a point probably around 8 o'clock. I turned to my colleague and I said, I think someone might end up dying tonight if they don't do something to change this drastically. And that's why when they opened the gates at 8:15, it was not an ideal scenario at all. And it was not a safe solution, right? To just let everyone into the stadium, not check tickets, not pat people down, not go through metal detectors. But I felt it was the only solution. The people that were crushed up against those gates had been there for hours. The temperatures were in the 90s. It was my hottest day here in South Florida of the 5 days that I was here in the lead up to the game. When I came into the stadium at 3 p.m., obviously it's 3 or 4 hours ahead of this. It was just so hot. The sun was bearing down right on that gate, the southwest gate of the stadium where I was watching. And I was thinking to myself, I wasn't surrounded by anybody at that point. And I came in soaking wet with sweat. And hours of watching people come through the gates, having fainted, being carried in unconscious, kids coming in completely red, soaked, their t-shirts soaked in sweat, crying. That something had to be done. And again, it wasn't a perfect solution, but had they not opened the gates, I think it would have been worse.
Who was running the security?
Well, the logistics of this tournament were run by CONMEBOL, the Association of the South American teams that puts on the Copa America. The last time Copa America was here in the United States was 2016, the Copa America Centenario. That tournament, a lot of the logistics and operations were run by Soccer United Marketing, which is Major League Soccer's marketing arm. U.S. Soccer played a big role. This time around, CONMEBOL wanted to run everything top to bottom. And, it was a little bit of a mess, this entire tournament. I was there on opening night. Argentina played Canada in Atlanta. The logistics weren't great. And all the way through the last day. Now, once you're at the stadium, of course, the coordination was happening between the security firm that works at Hard Rock Stadium, the Hard Rock Stadium operations people. I saw many of them down at the Southwest Gate trying to, I don't even want to say coordinate. I don't know exactly what they were doing because there wasn't a lot of communication happening even behind the gates, let alone to the people that were stuck in front of them. And then the Miami-Dade police officers and fire department were right there at the Southwest Gate where I was. So there were a lot of organizations working in the moment, but there wasn't a lot of organization happening and almost no communication. I mean, my editor's family was outside of the gates. Friends of mine outside of the gates were telling me they had no idea the game had been delayed. They went to get to the gate and they were within 8 feet of the gate when it closed, and then you're stuck. You can't go anywhere. And it was just a really, really dangerous situation. And I'm surprised that the organization, the preparation for this was not good enough. It was almost as if, Hard Rock thought to themselves, hey, we're hosting a soccer game, not a continental final with two of the most passionate fan bases in the world, who also happen to have enormous communities in South Florida. They were not ready for the rush of people that were going to come to that stadium.
Okay, let's fast forward to this. The United States hosting the World Cup in a couple of years. How do we learn from this? It feels like this keeps happening over and over and over. I don't know if we're learning from that. So how do you troubleshoot this?
Well, I think FIFA has their hands full in multiple ways. First of all, I think they need to be able to communicate to people that it'll be different when they run things, when they organize things. It'll be a completely different set of operations, different organization running things. CONMEBOL is an organization that reports essentially to FIFA. They are not FIFA. So, that hopefully will give you a little bit of security, thinking FIFA's done World Cups before all around the world. But I think for the American stadium operations in all of these different cities, I hope that they learn that the security logistics for these big games have to be different around the stadium. In other countries, they have multiple layers of security to get to the stadium so that you don't have these rushes at the gates. Because this is happening more and more. Like you said, we saw it in a Champions League final in Europe. Obviously, with what happened yesterday, there have to be checkpoints in order to kind of filter out some of the people who are trying to get into these games without tickets. Or else you end up with these bad situations. And I will say, at the early portion of this, they tried to open the gates a couple times, crack them open, and people would rush towards those openings. And that's human nature. I mean, they were stuck there. They were trying to get out, and then they would close the gates again. There was this concern between letting people in that didn't have tickets and the issues that can come from that, and the safety of the people themselves. And again, I think it shows that the security that FIFA has to go through with these stadiums, with these local police offices, they have to be diligent in creating checkpoints to prevent a buildup at the gates themselves.
Could this have been Messi's last big match?
Yeah, it could have been. He didn't. First of all, Argentina didn't come through the mix zone at the end of the night, so we didn't get to talk to the players at all after the game. A lot of the focus, and Messi made sure a lot of the focus was on Angel Di Maria, it being his last match. He was never going to take that moment away from him. And so, they said no one talked about it being Messi's last match. I wouldn't be surprised if he decided at one point it was, but I have a feeling he's going to stick around. I've never seen him so happy. You see him in the mix zone after the semifinal. He was smiling and laughing and just really enjoying himself within this group. Argentina is still playing in World Cup qualifiers. He's still playing for Inter Miami. I think as long as he's playing club soccer, he'll probably play for Argentina. But now we wait and see how the ankle heals up, and we wait and see if giving himself a couple days of space between this trophy and starting some medical work on his ankle makes him reflect on whether this should be the end.
Thank you, Paul. We appreciate you joining us, and thank you.
Thanks so much.
It's Paul Tenorio, The Athletic, covering last night. Yeah, there were two different events. There was the game itself, the match itself, and then what was happening prior to that. And, there's the documentary that was on Wembley. Was that the Euros, Seton, a few years ago?
Yeah, that was just the last ones, England, Italy.
Italy, yes. Yeah. And if you're watching that documentary, it is... You can see it. You can feel it. Like it's coming, and all of a sudden these fans. Now there was a ton of drinking, and they started early, and it was a mess. And then all of a sudden they brought the party to Wembley, and they were getting in, and they were getting in no matter what. You almost have to, if you can, have a barricade outside of the barricade, like these checkpoints to allow people in. But, the World Cup is going to be on home soil here. It's different. Like we're not passionate about soccer the way these countries are. And you have to understand that with your security measures. They were going through air conditioning ducts, vents. They were trying any way they could. And there were people who had tickets who went to their seats, and people were sitting in their seats and they weren't getting up. People didn't get in who had tickets. It's a lot of money that you spent, and then you didn't even get into the event. Like, that's inexcusable. I'm not going to put this all on South Florida and the police and security there because it wasn't run by them. But, there's enough blame to go around.